Most people don't misunderstand XRP because they haven't read enough about it. They misunderstand it because they're asking the wrong question. They ask whether XRP can flip another coin. They ask whether it can compete with smart contract platforms. They ask whether it belongs in the same category as Ethereum, Solana, or other layer 1 networks. But XRP was never designed to compete in that arena. And when you evaluate something using the wrong framework, you don't just get the wrong answer, you miss the point entirely. Today, we're going to step away completely from price charts, social media narratives, and speculation. Instead, guys, we're going to be looking at how XRP appears in the real world, inside policy papers, institutional reports, and global financial discussions. Not opinions, not influencers, but documents produced by the very entities responsible for maintaining the global financial system in the world. Because when you do that, a very different picture emerges. So before we talk about XRP, let's talk about railroads. In the early days of rail transport, most people didn't even invest in rail companies because they loved trains. They invested because railroads reorganized commerce itself. Railroads didn't even, move goods faster. They collapsed something called time, reduced friction, and unified fragmented markets into a single economic organism right here. And the most valuable railroads weren't the ones with the prettiest stations. They were the ones that became invisible infrastructure. That's the lens we need to use here. XRP is often discussed as if it were a consumer-facing technology, but that framing immediately breaks down. Its primary users were never meant to be retail participants. Its problem space was never decentralized apps or digital collectibles, and its success was never meant to be measured by hype cycles. XRP was dissolved to solve a plumbing problem, a problem so large, so enormous that people don't even understand or realize that it exists. Modern global finance runs on a system that was built decades ago. To move money across borders, banks must pre-fund accounts in foreign currencies, a system known as Nostro and Vostro accounts. This locks trillions of dollars, yes, trillions of dollars into idle capital across the globe. Capital that isn't earning a yield, capital that can't be deployed efficiently, capital that exists solely to compensate for slow, fragmented settlement systems. This is not a cryptocurrency problem. This is a global liquidity problem we're seeing right here, and it's estimated in the multi-trillion-dollar range. When institutions evaluate technology, they don't ask whether it's exciting. They ask this instead. They ask, does it reduce settlement risk? Does it lower capital requirements? Does it improve speed and transparency? Does it integrate with, existing systems? And this is where XRP starts appearing quietly, consistently, and repeatedly in places, people are not checking. They're not looking. So when XRP appears in, United Kingdom materials, it's not described as a speculative asset. It's described as an on-demand liquidity, a mechanism that allows financial institutions to source liquidity only when needed. So, rather than pre-funding accounts across the globe, XRP is framed not as a currency replacement, but as a bridge between currencies. Okay. So this distinction matters. This is super important to understand. A bridge doesn't replace the banks on either side of the river. Okay. It allows them to transact efficiently without holding unnecessary capital. Think of how a real bridge works. When the cars go past the bridge, it is a bridge because there's a water up under it. So the bridge serves a purpose. XRP serves that same exact purpose. Okay. So the World Economic Forum does not care about crypto narratives. Its focus is systematic efficiency. It's in the analysis chain. Okay. So it's focused on the analysis of how the blockchain use cases work. XRP appears as part of the next generational financial infrastructure, not consumer finance, not retail speculation, infrastructure, specifically infrastructure that enables near instant cross-border settlements, minimal energy consumption, low transaction costs, high scalability. In other words, exactly what institutions require when moving value at scale, okay? And that is exactly what XRP is built for. Retail investors often fixate on speed, but institutions care about finality. Settlement certainty within seconds change the risk profile of global finance entirely. It reduces counterparty exposure, it compresses settlement windows, it allows balance sheets to operate with far less idle capital. That's why XRP settling in seconds, 3 to 5 seconds, that matters a lot, not just for convenience, but for risk management. When the official monetary and financial institution forum examines XRP, the language, becomes even more revealing. They describe a model where banks no longer need fragmented liquidity pools across multiple jurisdictions. Instead, liquidity is consolidated into a single digital bridge asset. This is going to reduce intermediaries. This is going to reduce spreads. This is going to reduce settlement delays. This is also going to reduce, capital efficiency. The result is not disruption for, disruption's sake. It's optimization. The World Bank doesn't endorse assets, it studies systems. So, when you see XRP appear in World Bank materials, it's referenced in the context of real-time gross settlement, cross-border remittances, and liquidity provisioning, not as a replacement for fiat, not as a threat, to sovereignty, but instead as a tool. And tools do not need hype, they need reliability. A common misconception is that stablecoins, eliminate the need for bridge assets, but stablecoins still represent just one currency. Unless the world adopts a single global currency, which it won't, and I'm telling you it won't, you will still need a neutral settlement layer between jurisdictions. That's where we bring bridge assets. That is why bridge assets exist in today's world. They sit between currencies, not above them and not below them. When the OECD discusses XRP, it places it inside the evolution of national accounting and settlement systems. This is critical right here for XRP. This is critical for global payments because accounting systems don't change often, and when they do, they don't reserve. Once something becomes embedded at that level, it becomes part of the financial substrate, invisible, unavoidable, foundational. Okay, so XRP isn't designed to be, moderately successful. Either it becomes, a functional component of global finance or it doesn't. There is no middle ground. That's why it confuses people because, success here doesn't look like a retail problem. It looks like the quite opposite. It looks like integration. Okay, it looks like silent integration. Most people didn't invest in TCP or IP because it had a logo. They invested in it because it became obvious that, everything would ran on it eventually. XRP is positioned very similar, not as an app, not as a brand, but as a protocol layer for value. If XRP fulfills even a portion of its intended role, its value won't come from speculation. It'll actually come as a byproduct of utility. As one architect of the system once said, early participants are not the goal, they're the side effect. This isn't about belief, it's about design, okay? And when you stop asking whether XRP can compete with other cryptocurrencies such as Solana, Ethereum, or Bitcoin, wherever the case may be, and start asking the real problem, what is it built to solve, the confusion will disappear.